Good evening, everyone. All right, I'd like to call the 2023 town meeting first session deliberative session to order. My name's Chad Stearns. I'm the town moderator. We'll go over the meeting information shortly, but right now, could you please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? The flag is over here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. All right, just a few housekeeping items before we get into the warrant articles. Exits, there's an exit over there, and of course the one that you came in on over here on this side. Bathrooms, if you go out this door right here and take a right, the men's and ladies' room will be right there. Introductions. Tonight we have the select board. Roger Emerson, chair. All right, Carrie Gendro, vice chair, and Linda McNeil. All right, after that we also have town administration and department heads. Jim Gleason, the town manager. Lori Belosevich, finance manager. And Paul Smith, police chief. Michael McQuillan, fire and rescue chief. Doug Damko, public works director. Is Steve Bean here tonight? Oh, hi Steve. All right, he's the transfer station director. Caitlin Leveroni, parks and rec director. All right, Adam Rezek, opera house director. I know I saw Adam, there he is. All right, Megan Carr, Littleton Public Library director. Angela Brusso, the town clerk. She's in the back. She's trying to hide, but she's back there. You're welcome. All right. Is Seal Steppings here tonight? No? Okay. And Tom Considine, I don't know if I saw Tom from Littleton Water and Light. No? Okay. All right. Lots of people go into making tonight a success and a well-run meeting. So I'd just like to recognize, the people that set up the room, the Littleton School District, the custodial staff, Chad Fillion with the televising of this, the department heads for putting together everything, supervisors of the checklist, making sure that we're doing everything correct, and many volunteers, the ballot clerks tonight. So thank you to everybody that helps out. Again, my name's Chad Stearns. I'm the moderator, elected by the voters in March. I realize that I have very large shoes to fill. This is my first deliberative session speaking as moderator. So if I make a mistake, please just help me out and give me a little break. And luckily, we have Walter Mitchell here, who is the town attorney. So hopefully, I don't get off track too much. All right. So tonight is the first session of 2023 town meeting. The second session, which is the official ballot voting, is Tuesday, March 14th, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the Highway Garage. Tonight's session is the legislative session. You, the registered voters, are the legislative body. We're here with a specific purpose to discuss the posted warrant. This is not an open meeting to discuss just anything. State law requires that we only conduct business that's on the warrant. We're going to read each warrant article. We'll have someone from the town present. And we'll have a general discussion on it, debate, any amendments that need to be made, and then we'll have a vote. Once discussion's done, we'll move to vote on the article to put it on the ballot. When all articles are voted on, that concludes our meeting. Amendments, if someone is to make an amendment, must be submitted in writing that we can read, and please do so ahead of time if possible. It just makes it go smoother. Tonight, Littleton registered voters are permitted to speak. If you have not already, please go in at the check-in and register to vote. You'll be given a couple cards here. For when we do votings, please hold up your card so that we can count you when we vote. Typically, in the past, we've held a vote, and we'll continue to do that to allow non-registered voters to speak. Otherwise, they're typically here to listen and observe, and they do not vote. Again, some of those that non-registered voters that we try to have speak are town employees, social service articles, volunteers. And I do have a list here from town administration and a few others. Is there anybody that's not a registered voter that would like to be considered to be able to speak tonight that I haven't got on my list? I'll go through the list that I have, and if anybody else would like to be added to that list, just let me know. I have Jim Gleason, Doug Damko, Steve Bean, Megan Carr, Seal Stubbings, Chad Miller, Tommy Hartwell, Walter Mitchell, Robin Christoph. Did I miss anybody? Lori? Oh, I didn't have Lori on there. Lori Belosevich. And she's the finance manager. Sorry about that, Lori. All right, are there any others? Oh, yeah. Okay. And can you state? What was that? I'm sorry. Sandy Brackett. Oh, Sandy Brackett for the Boys and Girls Club. All right. Do I have a motion to have these people speak if desired? All right. We have, and who made the motion? Sorry. All right. Is that Ron? Ron Bolt. All right. And the second? All right. Bill Gendro for a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right. Opposed? All right. The ayes have it. All right, so again, we have our microphones here. This will be for myself, for town administration and the select board. And then for the audience, we have a speaker out in the center. When speaking, please state your full name and the town of residence. Let's see, if we do have a vote to end discussion, anyone who's already standing waiting to speak will be allowed to speak. When you're speaking, please make your point. If you have additional comments afterwards, please let everybody else speak before you get back in line for more comments. We just want to give everybody the opportunity to speak. If someone breaks the rules or is ruled out of order, there will be a warning. Continuously not obeying the rules, out of order or overly disruptive despite warnings to stop, at last resort may be asked to leave the meeting, but I don't think it'll come to that. I just want to put that out there. Again, this is, we hope to have this in one session tonight. Our backup date is tomorrow evening after the school's deliberative session. A few different votes that are typically taken throughout the night, just to let everybody know how those run. In the past, we've had votes to restrict reconsideration after one or numerous articles have been gone over, and we're still able to do that tonight. It could be after one, could be after 5 or 6, so however many the voting body chooses. We just need a motion to restrict reconsideration and what you're restricting, and then the body can vote on that. Also, historical housekeeping. In the past, we've had votes to stop discussion or pause discussion at a certain time of night, say 10 o'clock, and then we would resume on the makeup date, which would be tomorrow after the schools. And then we've also in the past considered nonprofit articles out of order, just a lot of times to get those out of the way, have the volunteers speak if requested, and then they're able to leave and we'll get back to business. So those are a couple things that we've done in the past. So if people want to do that, they certainly are able to make that motion. So without further ado, we can get to the warrant. All right, Article 1. To choose necessary officers, including 1 selectman for a 3-year term, 1 library trustee for a 3-year term, 1 library trustee for a 3-year term, 1 library trustee for a 3-year term, 1 trustee of the trust funds for a 3-year term, and 1 Parks and Recreation Commission for the 3-year term. There's no debate on this, as this is just the election. It'll go on the ballot as presented. So on to Article 2. Article 2, zoning amendment. Are you in favor of amendment number 1 as proposed by the Littleton Planning Board for the Littleton zoning ordinance as follows? Amend section 8.04 regarding permitted home occupation to clarify that the list of home occupations in the ordinance are examples of the type of permitted home occupations and not a finite list of permitted home occupations. That is the warrant, and to speak on that today is Milt Bratz, who is the zoning officer.
Good evening. As you know, in the past few years, we've been reviewing the zoning ordinances here in the town. The ordinances were written back in the early 1970s, and periodically, as you know, we've had amendments to the zoning ordinances, and tonight's proposal has to do with just one warrant article, with one zoning area, which is permitted home occupations. And the way it reads right now, the following are permitted home occupations provided they do not violate any of the provisions of the previous standards or definitions. We have a list of standards that come before the actual home occupation list. And I'll just very quickly read a few of these: dressmaking, painting, telephone answering, home crafts, tutoring, home cooking, computer programming, babysitting services. Some months ago, as we were reviewing, we noticed that there was a definition of a home professional office, but it wasn't listed in the uses category, so we really can't have a home professional office. With close to 43% of people who have been working in offices prior to the pandemic lockdown, they're now working at home. And the assumption we're making is that we have people here in town who are working from home that used to work in an office, or they're working at home and they've been working at home for years as professionals. Our recommendation to council was to add this to the list, and her recommendation was really these categories that I just read aren't specific categories that are allowed. So her recommendation was that we make the changes to the wording that was just read off. Are examples of types of permitted home occupations and not a finite list. So that gives us a little bit more leeway in terms of being able to acknowledge something as a home occupation as long as the standards that are listed above are met. That's basically all this warrant article is speaking to. Do you have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Milt. All right, as this is a zoning article, it can't be amended at this meeting. So if there's no more questions, we'll place this one on the ballot. Article 3, Public Works borrowing for improvement to Dell's Dam. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $602,200 for the Public Works Department to make improvements to Dell's Dam and to authorize the issuance of not more than $602,200 of bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, and to authorize the selectmen to issue, negotiate, sell, and deliver such bonds or notes, and to determine the rate of interest thereon and the maturity and other terms thereof, and to authorize the selectmen to apply for, obtain, and accept federal, state, or other aid, if any, which may be available for said project, with the amount of such bonds or notes to be reduced by any grant, aid, or other funding received for the project, and to comply with all laws applicable to said project, and further to authorize the selectmen to take any other action to pass any other vote relative thereto. Estimated tax impact, none for 2023, estimated to be 16.1 cents per thousand in 2024 through 2030. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0 to 0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 6-0 to 0. Requires a 3/5 ballot vote. And Jim, I assume you want to talk on this?
Could I have Doug, you want to speak to this, please? Yeah.
Good evening, Doug Damko, Public Works Director. This article tonight was brought before the Board of Selectmen in a public information meeting back in November of last year. And we laid out, had an engineering study done of alternatives, and I think we looked at 5 different options for Dell's Dam that were presented to the select board. And so this warrant article is based off the alternative number 2 that was selected as the preferred. It's basically a rehabilitation of the existing dam to basically try to keep its current look and make changes so it meets state standards. It's currently identified as a red listed dam in the New Hampshire DES's inventory and has been on that list for a number of years. So the goal of this project is to bring it into compliance. We did receive some state monies this year. Actually, were accepted by the board at the beginning of the year for bridge rehabilitation, and we've determined some of those funds can be applied to this project because of the roadway bridge that's over the top of the dam. And so we have $212,000 of funds that are going to be an offset on this warrant article. So I can answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
All right. Well, with no questions or discussion, we'll put it up to a vote. All those of placing the article on the ballot, please raise your hands and say aye. Aye. All right, opposed? All right, motion carries. And the article will be placed on the ballot. Article 4, Public Works borrowing for roadway culverts. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $610,000 for the Public Works Highway Department to repair as many of the roadway culverts as possible based on the actual costs. The estimated costs are $250,000 for Mans Hill and Palmer Brook, $150,000 for Keeler Road and Baker Brook, $150,000 for Riverside Drive at Curtis Brook, and $60,000 South Street in Curtis Brook. And to authorize the issuance of not more than $610,000 of bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, and to authorize selectmen to issue, negotiate, sell, and deliver such bonds or notes and to determine the rate of interest thereon and the maturity and other terms thereof, and to authorize the selectmen to apply for, obtain, and accept federal, state, or other aid, if any, which may be available for said project, with the amount of such bonds or notes to be reduced by any grant, aid, or other funding received for the project, and to comply with all laws applicable to said project, and further to authorize the selectmen to take any other action or to pass any other vote relative thereto. Estimated tax impact, none for 2023, estimated to be 16.3 cents per thousand in 2024 through 2030. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0-0, recommended by Budget Committee 6-0-0, requires a 3/5 ballot vote. Doug, I assume that's you?
All right, regarding this warrant article, this came out of our capital improvement plan, a 5-year capital improvement plan that was just updated this last year. And so I went through, and these are roadway culverts. It's different than a bridge. The state has a definition of a bridge that has to have a free span of 10 feet or more. So these are not that. These are just roadway culverts that are either round culverts or box structures. But during my time here with the town so far, these are the ones that have come onto my radars, ones that are either currently deficient, have something failing on them, or they're too small. So we've put this together. There's been a number of grant opportunities that we continue to pursue for use of these funds or try to offset these funds, but a lot of times they require a match, and so this funding will help towards that. So if you have any questions, I can definitely answer them. Thank you.
Ron Bolt, Littleton resident. It's a kind of a philosophical question. No issue with the article itself, but the last article and this article are both going to be bonds. That, of course, requires 60% vote, makes it a higher hurdle. Later on in the warrant, for instance, Article 21, which is a basic road repairs, that's a straight up vote, no bonding. So I'd like to know what the philosophy is on when we bond and when we don't bond. And if those figures are available, I would like to know what it's going to cost us over that 7-year period for these last two articles, as far as interest that we would have to pay. Thank you.
Jim, I won't be able to answer that one, so I don't know if Lori can assist.
Excuse me. The Dell's Dam improvements borrowing is estimated interest cost for the 7-year borrowing would be $120,440. And for the culvert repairs, the $610,000, the interest would be $122,000 estimated for the 7-year borrowing. And that's estimated using 5% borrowing rate. I guess the philosophy behind whether we bond or whether we use our reserves is looking at what reserves we have, and the budget committee and the board of selectmen look at those and decide, and myself, at what is recommended. And at this time, borrowing would be recommended for this because the work is urgent, needs to be done, and rather not tap into the reserves at this time, but that's certainly an option if voters want to do that.
John Piat Littleton. I'm on the budget committee that she just called out. So to answer the philosophical side of it, if it's a multi-use kind of asset to the town, like a bridge or a culvert, then or a dam, we thought that a bond would be appropriate, but something like continuous road improvements and sideway and paving improvements that is ongoing year after year after year, then that shouldn't be bonded. So it's a combination of the amount of money that we're talking about and the impact it would have on the current tax rate and the longevity of the improvement that we'll get out of it. So hopefully, you take, for example, the one that we have in front of us here, the culvert improvements. It's a 6-year bond, I believe, because it says 24 to 2030, and it shouldn't be more than, it should last us way more than 6 years, hopefully 10 at the least. So as a budget committee, we had asked the finance director to not have the term exceed or equal the expected use of the item whenever we bond, so hopefully we can get ahead of it someday, or realistically, I think we know that's never going to happen, but at least not go further underwater.
All right, seeing no one for discussion, we'll put it to vote. All those in favor of placing the article on the warrant as presented, please raise your cards and say aye.
Aye.
All right, opposed? All right, the ayes have it. On to Article 5.
Mr. Moderator, could I make a motion that we go to Article 37 through Article 46, the petitioned warrant articles?
Okay, so you're suggesting to consider those out of order?
Correct.
Out of the order. Okay, we have a motion to reconsider those articles out of order. Is there a second? All right, that's Linda McNeil seconding. All right, any discussion on that? Seeing no one for discussion. All those in favor, please raise your cards and say aye. All right, opposed? All right, the ayes have it. So we will go to Article 36. Yes, 36. 37. Yep. All right, sorry, I was just finding my place on my sheet. All right. Oh, there we are. Article 37. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $19,411 to support downtown beautification efforts, partnership between the town of Littleton and the Littleton Area Chamber of Commerce, including downtown flowers and holiday decorations by petition. Estimated tax impact of 2.7 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3 to 0 to 0, recommended by the Budget Committee 6 to 0 to 0. All right, make a motion. All right, we have a motion to a second. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor of placing it on the warrant as presented, raise your card and say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Article 38, to see if the voters of the town of Littleton will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,000 to support the Second Chance Animal Rescue, which is a nonprofit organization that provides care and shelter for abused cats and kittens. Second Chance also sponsors monthly low-cost spay-neuter clinics for both dogs and cats, as well as shot clinics in the spring, fall by petition. Estimated tax impact of 0.7 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3 to 0 to 0, recommended by the Budget Committee 6 to 0 to 0.
I'll make that motion.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor of placing the warrant on the article on the warrant, please hold your cards and say aye. All right, opposed? The ayes have it. Article 39, to see if the voters of the town of Littleton will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,500, to assist the Littleton Food Pantry, located at 70 Reddington Street, Littleton, New Hampshire 03561, in purchasing practical day-to-day items that are needed for the program. The Littleton Food Pantry is a choice pantry that serves our community by providing food, personal care items, and more. All services is free of charge. All service is free of charge, and all are welcome by petition. Estimated tax impact of 0.2 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3 to 0 to 0, recommended by the Budget Committee 6 to 0 to 0. All right, we've got a motion, we've got a second. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor of putting the article on the warrant as presented, please hold your cards up and say aye. Aye. All right, opposed? The ayes have it. Article 40, to see if the town of Littleton will vote to assist Pathways Pregnancy Care Center in the amount of $3,200 to help in maintaining and increasing its material assistance to learn to earn program. Through material assistance, clients receive diapers, wipes, clothing, and other family essentials monthly. The Learn to Earn program enables those who take free education classes about parenting and other life skills classes to earn points, which can be used to receive additional items such as car seats, strollers, and pack and plays from the Baby Boutique. Learn to Earn allows clients to receive a hand up rather than just a handout. The center has assisted at least 80 families through our community in the past year, offering 1,758 material items. There is no requirement to receive any of Pathways services. All services are free and confidential to anyone who needs assistance by petition. Estimated tax impact of 0.4 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3 to 0 to 0, recommended by the Budget Committee 6 to 0 to 0. All right, motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor of putting the article on the warrant, please hold your card up and say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Article 41, shall the voters raise and appropriate $35,750 to Grafton County Senior Citizens Council through the Littleton Area Senior Center and the Service Link Resource Center for services for Littleton residents in 2023. These services include congregate meals, home-delivered meals, transportation, outreach support, service link support, and more by petition. Estimated tax impact of 5 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3 to 0 to 0, recommended by the Budget Committee 5 to 0 to 0.
I'll make that motion.
We've got a motion. We've got a second. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing nobody. All those in favor of putting the article on the warrant as presented, please hold your cards up and say aye. All right, all opposed? The ayes have it. Article 42. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $12,010 for the operation of Tri-County Community Action Program, Inc. service programs in Littleton. Transportation, energy assistance, weatherization, guardianship, Head Start, homeless intervention and prevention, disaster relief, Tamworth Dental Center by petition. Estimated tax impact of 1.7 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 5-0. All right, we've got a motion, we've got a second. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of putting the article on the ballot as presented, please hold your card up and say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Article 43, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,000 for Amanuset Community Health Services, Inc. ACHS is a nonprofit community health center that provides primary preventative health care to anyone regardless of their ability to pay. This will help ACHS continue to provide high-quality care to 1,897 current Littleton patients, as well as reach more of those in need by petition. Estimated tax impact is 2.1 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 5-0. A motion, a second. Is there any discussion? All right, we'll put it up to a vote. All those in favor of putting the article on the warrant as presented, please hold your card up and say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. Article 44, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $11,000 to support the Boys and Girls Club of the North Country in order to provide a healthy, safe, and productive after-school and vacation camp environment for children from Littleton and the local community. The club provides busing from the school to the club provides busing from the school to the club for the after-school program, which alone costs $18,000 a year by petition. Estimated tax impact of 1.5 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 5-0. Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor of placing the article as presented on the warrant, please hold your card up and say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Article 45, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $21,500 for the purpose of supporting hospice, home health, palliative, and long-term care services provided by North Country Home Health and Hospice by petition. Estimated tax impact of 3 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 5-0. All right, motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor of placing the article as presented on the warrant, please hold your card up and say aye. Aye. All right, opposed? The ayes have it. All right, Article 46, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $9,696 for White Mountain Mental Health and Common Ground Programs of Northern Human Services, serving the mental health and development service needs of Littleton residents by petition. Estimated tax impact of 1.3 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 5-0. We've got a motion. We've got a second. All right. Oh, we've got someone that wants to speak.
Yeah, Ron Bolt again. Somebody's got to ask questions. I should have asked this when we started.
It gives me a break. Thank you.
Yeah, I should have asked this question when we started on this series of articles. In the past, sometimes the petitioning organizations have presented the Board of Selectmen with a letter of justification. Sometimes they have not done that. Can you tell me whether you received letters of justification on all of these articles? Thank you.
Pre-COVID, we did ask for financials for the petitioned warrant articles. By law, they have to go on the warrant anyways, but we were looking at their financials. We were making sure that they were financially feasible and still basically in existence. That was pre-COVID. We found that some of the organizations did supply their financials, some did not. And then one year, I think it was just the year before COVID, we asked again, we didn't get much as far as a response. During COVID, we did waive the recommendations, and then we have suspended that. It's a good question, Ron, and we found that as long as it's petitioned warrant article, it has to go on the ballot anyways. So.
Dan Stearns, Budget Committee. This year there was one new request that was petitioned, and it's been customary for the Budget Committee to reach out to that organization, even though it would be put on the ballot by petition, but we would like to know a little bit more about them, their financials, who they serve, where they're located, that sort of thing. And so we try to follow that practice where possible, and so that the Budget Committee can ask questions and then make a recommendation. And in this case, we recommended it in the affirmative. Thank you.
All right, are there any other questions or discussion? All right, all those in favor of placing the article as presented on the warrant, please hold your card up and say aye. Aye. All right, opposed? All right, the ayes have it. And I believe that was the end of those to be out of order, is that correct? Yeah, we'll save 47 for later on in the meeting. So now we get to go back to Article 5. Article 5, shall the town raise and appropriate as an operating budget for the general fund, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purpose set forth therein totaling $9,854,096. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $9,717,473, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, 10, and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. If Article 27 fails, then this Article 5 operating budget amount, not the default budget, will be reduced by $122,950, and the estimated total tax impact will be reduced to $3.22.9 per thousand. The estimated tax impact of this article is $3.34.4 per thousand. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 5-0.
Doug, you want to, next slide, please. This is just a summary, a breakdown of the 2023 budget as proposed. You can see where there were some increases and decreases. The majority of the increase that is coming this year is healthcare costs have gone up again substantially in reference to the town. We've also budgeted for increases in heating in terms of gas and electric, those costs that we're all experiencing even in our own homes. That also includes an annual increase for non-unionized employees. And this past year, for 2022, the board was able to use reserves to leave your tax rate at $23.06. And while I can't tell you tonight that would be the tax rate in 2023, because we don't control the county, the school board, or the state, but the town is sitting very well financially with increase in reserves to be able to address the tax rate in 2023. And maybe just to give a little perspective too, just a little bit of an update involving the the budget year that we just finished. While these are unaudited numbers, and so I'm going to give you ranges to there, but the general fund this year ended up around 6% under budget, which should have been $500,000. So that's savings that are returned to the taxpayers through the reserve funds. And in 2021, we also had a comparable number of $520,000 that were returned. So in the two of the budgets that we've completed in 21 and 22, there's been $1 million in savings via the departments, and also some of our impacts weren't as great as we expected in places like welfare. In another perspective, in reference to your town's reserves, in 2021, the board started out the year with $525,077 in reserves. That increased to $1,675,109 in 2022. The board used $475 of that to buy down the tax rate, so your 2022 tax rate was the same as 2021. And the estimated reserve balance when we return the surplus from this year will take us back to $1.7 million plus. And so it leaves the town with a secure safety net for unplanned emergencies, as we would in our own homes, and also gives the Board of Selectmen some pretty significant play next year in terms of to see how much of that reserve they can use once we get all the tax rates from the county, the state, and the school, and then the town, and what we can do in terms of the town rate. The town rate, as you can see in that slide, is projected, well, excuse me, Doug, I think it's the next one. Yeah, the tax rate, let me get back to my notes. That's what happens when you get too many papers in front of you. Is the 5.925 was the rate for this year, and if everything in terms of all the warrant articles pass, then the proposed tax rate for next year would be 99.9 cents, and that's the tax rate that, with the revenue sitting at 1.7 million plus, the board should be able to adjust that tax rate. And I can't tell you today exactly what that dollar amount would be in reference to the overall tax rate, but the town's tax rate should be able to be maintained, if not reduced, by the budget surplus, and still leaving the board enough in the safety bank or the account for unplanned emergencies that we could face in terms of that process. Any questions in reference to specifics about the general fund budget?
All right, no questions or discussion regarding Article 5? All right, all those in favor of placing Article 5 on the budget, on the warrant as presented, please hold your cards up and say aye. Aye. All right. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Article 6. To see if the town will vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement for 3 years reached between the Board of Selectmen and the State Employees Association of New Hampshire, Inc., SEA, Chapter 57, Littleton Police Employees, Local 1984 Service Employees International Union, CTW, CLC, which calls for increases in wages and benefits at the current staffing level as follows. 2023, $93,721. 2024, $60,186. 2025, $50,273. And further, to raise and appropriate from taxation the sum of $93,721 for fiscal year 2023, such sum representing the additional costs attributable to the increase in wages and benefits over those of the appropriation at current staffing levels paid in the prior fiscal year. Estimated tax impact of 13 cents per thousand. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 2 to 1 to 0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 7 to 0 to 0. Is that you, Jim? Okay. Does someone from the town want to?
This was a challenging year from the standpoint that both unions came up for negotiation. In the past, the town has tried to stagger. And another change we did, well, we have two unions. We did allow the fire department and the highway and transfer station to break into separate sections. There's still one union, but there's a Division A and Division B. So in the Article 8 is dealing particularly with the fire department. Oh, hang on. Highway, I'm sorry. No, Article 6.
We're on Article 6 right now.
Yeah, which is the police, the police union. So the goal in going into anytime you have negotiations is, first of all, is try to obtain agreement between the town management and the unions. And it was also to try to, in working with the unions, to see if we couldn't get 3-year agreements with one and 4-year agreements with another, so that we didn't have another period of time where the two of them came up at the same time, adding a little more challenge in both negotiation and in funding. We were successful, I think, with the police union in negotiating a 3-year agreement with the costs that are proposed there to you. And if passed and approved by the voters, at least we wouldn't have labor costs in terms of labor attorney and negotiating costs involving the police department until 2026. Any questions or comments?
Rudy Gelsi from Littleton, New Hampshire, taxpayer. Okay, it's, I read the Article 6, which, the way the town manager, the three selectmen, they spell them in Article 6, it's not quite understandable for the taxpayer. At least you are a mathematician, which, the way it's written in this thing over here, nobody said that in 3 years term, this particular Article 6, it will cost the taxpayer $451. $451.
Rudy, would you please speak up to the mic?
Oh, yeah,
so
sure.
everyone can
Sorry,
hear?
sorry.
That's okay, thank you.
Okay, it's $451,805. This is for 3 years, okay? Now, if they vote this particular Article 6 on next election, that doesn't mean, you guys complain me, we are really, quote unquote, screwed, because eventually that's how much it's going to cost. $451,000. Now, it's up to you. I suggest all my friends over here and all the taxpayers to vote no to Article 6. And, if you, but you and I will talk about it.
Rudy, the only comment, and you are right, when you look at the collective cost of this particular contract, would be $204,181 over the 3-year period. You're adding the other two articles in, so I'm just talking about this particular one.
Article number 6?
Yes.
It's 451,000. I'm sorry, sir, we don't agree at the kind of money that we gotta pay for the taxpayer.
I understand your point. You're doing the cumulative total and versus the listing. So I understand your point.
That's all right.
No, I understand your point. The only comment, it's not an argument, is any raise that has ever been given to anybody, union or non-union, is cumulative. It doesn't go away, so this isn't new. So any previous 2 or 3 year agreements, they all accumulate. So you don't start off at 0 again each year and then add to that. So that's not anything new, and that's not different in this budget.
No, to me, the main, discussion on this particular Article 6, it's that the taxpayer and all of us, we know that if we say yes, in 3 years, it's going to cost $451,000. That's it. I don't, it's up to them. They can vote yes.
And part of my job, or any town manager's job, and staff and finance directors and board of selectmen, are to work the budget so that we show how that's paid for and that's funded.
Please vote no to Article number 6. Thank you.
Luke Harvey, resident Littleton. I just did the math on my phone right here, and that math comes up to $243,901. I say vote yes.
All right. Is there any other discussion on the article? All right. All right, so all those in favor of putting the article on the warrant as presented, please hold your cards up and say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. On to Article 7. Shall the town, if warrant article number 6 is defeated, authorize the governing body to call one special meeting at its option to address warrant article number 6, cost items only. Estimated tax impact of none. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0 to 0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 2 to 5 to 0. It doesn't have to be moved, but you can speak. Just state your name.
John Piet, Littleton, and Budget Committee. My concern is that it says recommended by the Budget Committee, then it shows that the vote failed, that it's 2 to Could we say not recommended by the Budget Committee and then put the voting results in that, or is that already decided? I'm just concerned it may confuse. If people read the bolded text, they're going to say that it was recommended by the Budget Committee when it wasn't. That's all.
I'm going to...
I guess I'll defer to the...
Yeah, I'm going to defer to the attorney just on that in terms of the language.
That would be the appropriate way to do it.
The way it's listed.
All right.
The way this gentleman is suggesting.
All right, so is there an amendment?
So if the Budget Committee doesn't recommend it, we should say no by the Budget Committee by that vote.
Okay, so Walter Mitchell, the town's attorney, confirmed that the proper way to say that is that it was not recommended by the Budget Committee. So that's been the advice of council, but this is the way that it's written, so if somebody wants to make an amendment to change that, that's what we would need next. Is that correct, Walter?
I make a motion that we change it to match to what council's recommending.
Oh, hold on. Hold on just a second, guys.
Let's have a conversation and we can do it on the microphone.
Okay. And for all those of you that don't know, this is...
The recommendation is not part of the article. It can be, after this meeting, based on the outcome of this meeting, it can be changed. And I think it would be appropriate if the selectmen agree just to make that change in the final.
Okay, so that'll be more of a clerical change than a change that's voted on it tonight.
Correct.
Okay.
It's for me.
All right, so I guess we'll have that.
For point of order, I withdraw my motion.
Thank you, sir. All right, is there any other discussion? All those in favor of placing the article on the warrant as presented, please hold your cards up and say aye. All right. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Article 8, to see if the town will vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement for 3 years reached between the Board of Selectmen and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFSCME, Council 93, Local 1340A, Unit A, Highway Department and Transfer Station, which calls for increases in wages and benefits at the current staffing level as follows. 2023, $54,510. 2024, $14,671. 2025, $14,831. And further, to raise and appropriate from taxation the sum of $54,510 for fiscal year 2023, such sum representing the additional costs attributable to the increase in wages and benefits over those of the appropriation at current staffing levels paid in the prior fiscal year. Estimated tax impact of 7.6 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 2 to 1 to 0, recommended by the Budget Committee 7 to 0 to 0. Is there any discussion?
Okay, Article 8, it's almost like Article 6. The amount of money in 3 years that's going to cost us, or the taxpayer, it will be $207,703. What it's missing over here, I'm sorry, for my friends over here, the town manager, because he's my friend, is to specify that when the people go inside the booths, and they see not just that 54,000, 14,000, in 3 years, just the amount of money that the taxpayer, they got to come up for the next 3 years. This would be the right way to enlighten all the taxpayers how much it will cost. That's my only I don't know if it's complaint or not, but, I suggest everybody to vote no Article 8 because it will cost us a lot of money. Thank you.
Thank you for, Rudy. Oh, go ahead.
So,
Your name?
sorry, John Piet Littleton. I'm going to make a motion that we alter the writing of this article. That's allowed in this meeting, correct?
I'll ask town council. Can
we make a motion to alter the wording so we can include the total cost of the article? That's essentially what he's asking for, and I think it would make sense. Yeah, cumulative cost. Because what he's coming up with is he's taking the year from the 54,510 times the 3 years that cost, so that's 162,000, 28,000 or 29,000 for the 24 times the 2 years that we're signing up for that one, and then add the 14,831 for the last one, so that gives us the 207,703. On the last one, it was 93,000 times 3 years, so that first year's cumulative cost ends up being 279,000, and then the 60 times 2, so that's how we ended up with the $400,000 number before as well. So there was no motion made on the other one, but I'm making a motion on this one that we change the wording to include for a cumulative cost of $207,703.
Yeah.
And the answer to your question is, can we do that? Are we allowed to do that? And my answer has to be maybe. And the reason I say maybe, language that is set out in a statute, you can't change. This language didn't come from the statute. But this language is the language, the format that is, some would say recommended, some would say dictated by the DRA. This isn't language that the selectmen made up.
Okay.
This is the same format that the DRA demands that every town use. Now, if you chose to change that, whether they would fight it, I don't know. I don't know how they would react to it. But that's the best explanation I can give you.
All right, I don't think it's worth that hassle. So I'm withdrawing my motion or whatever, so thank you.
Thank you.
Rudy Gelson, Littleton. according to the attorney over here, he says that the language cannot be changed. The language can be changed from the people that they wrote the warrant articles. This is exactly the same on a right to know New Hampshire. If we send the bill in and the language is not appropriate, they can change. We can change the language because it's a request. The same thing over here. We just wanted tree selectmen, the town manager, to change the language. That's it. It's no, he said no, they can change. Yes, they can change.
Thank you for your input. All right. Is there any other discussion on the article? All right, seeing nobody. All those in favor of placing Article 8 on the warrant as presented, please hold your card up and say aye. Aye. All right, opposed? No. All right, the ayes have it. On to Article 9. Special town meeting. Shall the town, if warrant article number 8 is defeated, authorize the governing body to call one special meeting at its option to address warrant article number 8, cost items only. Estimated tax impact none. Recommended by Board of Selectmen 3-0-0. Recommended by Budget Committee 2-5-0, which is, I guess, not recommended. Is there any discussion? All right. All those in favor of putting Article 9 on the warrant as presented, please hold your cards up. Hold on just a second.
Ray Bowler, Littleton. What? Oh, okay. I'm going to hold.
All right, we're going to wait. All right, now I'll put it to motion again. All those in favor of placing Article 9 on the ballot as presented, please hold your cards up and say aye. All right, opposed? All right, on to Article 10. To see if the town will vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement for 4 years reached between the Board of Selectmen and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFSCME Council 93, Local 1348, Unit B, Fire Department, which calls for increases in wages and benefits at the current staffing levels with the addition of one new position as follows. 2023, $72,875. 2024, $22,390. 2025, $41,770. 2026, $43,669. And further, to raise and appropriate from taxation the sum of $72,875 for fiscal year 2023, such sum representing the additional costs attributable to the increase in wages and benefits over those of the appropriation at current staffing levels paid in the prior fiscal year with the addition of one new position. Estimated tax impact of 10.1 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 2-1-0, recommended by the Budget Committee, or not recommended by the Budget Committee, 1-6-0. All right, we'll open it for discussion. Jim, if you want, town administration wants to go.
Yeah, I'm just going to make just a couple of comments. Again, this is this example where we allowed the highway and transfer station to be one unit and the fire department to be another unit under the same union union representative of ACME. In this case, the fire department has agreed to a 4-year budget, or excuse me, 4-year contract with the other 3 being 3 years. If all 3 are passed, while Mr. Gillespie is right, there's the accumulative cost and the totals that we're aware of that would be burdened by the town, both in year 1, 2, 3, and 4, and thereafter. There is also, if passed, substantial savings in reference to labor cost and labor negotiations. The town expended just under $50,000 this year in labor negotiations. So if we don't have to negotiate in 2023, 2024, and 2025, involving just the DPW and the police department, and that's the potential of somewhere $150,000 in savings. If you add in the fire department in year 4, that maybe gets us into almost a $200,000 potential administrative costs in just the labor negotiation side. We believe It's in the town's best interest to try to have a 4-year agreement with fire and a 3-year in police, again, as I've said, so that your two biggest bargaining units with the biggest number of employees don't come up at the same year, which then adds an added cost, I think, in trying to negotiate those contracts in the same year.
Ray Bowler, Littleton. Mr. Moderator, my name's Ray Bowler. I'm a retired career firefighter from Littleton. My career spanned nearly 40 years. I'd like to address some comments to the appointed Budget Committee. I'd like to ask the members what their motivation was in deciding not to support the fire union contract. Do you not value the fire department and its members as much as other town departments? As you seem not to question the cost of their contracts, and no disrespect to police and public works. Do you make decisions based on your own, or do you take advice from other prominent members of the community that have their own agenda? During the Budget Committee meeting in which the contract was discussed, a comment was made in relation to the town not negotiating in good faith. In my opinion, that was completely inappropriate. The town has a team, the union has a team, and each side have legal counsel. These are confidential personnel discussions that are not open to anyone. As an advisory committee, you do not have the right to participate in those discussions. I believe this was also disrespectful to town officials and department heads that are operating their respective departments. It seems that year after year, the same argument rears its ugly head: overtime. There's no process that completely eliminates overtime. The only way that happens is a minimum staffing level, as Lieutenant Hartwell explained in his recent interview with the Caledonian Record. Even large cities deal with minimum staffing levels for each apparatus citywide, typically 3 per engine and 4 per ladder. Of course, smaller cities and towns find this standard to be financially impossible. These firefighters put their lives on the line every day. They save lives every day. They are dedicated and highly trained. Do they not deserve the respect and support of every person in this town? The constant attack on this department needs to stop. Maybe it's time to dissolve the advisory budget committee, or at its best, find people willing to serve that do not have preconceived notions on how the department should be operated. That is the job of each department head. Don't get me wrong, I don't have a problem with differing opinions. I do have a problem with the same people with the same issues year after year who refuse to understand the information provided to them by department heads during these meetings. How many times have the Budget Committee members been to the fire department or any department to ask questions of the department head, talk with the personnel about what they do and how they do it? Once you do that, then maybe you'll begin to understand what they are all about. A note to the Select Board. I do believe that you should take back your authority to work with the town manager and department heads to deliver the town's budget only. That is your job, elected by the townspeople, to do the town's work. Thank you.
Rudy Gelsi. Again, Article number 10. I really, would like everybody to read these articles, and when they go to vote no. This particular article is going to cost the taxpayer in 4 years $487,659. Now, when everything is done with all these 3 warrant articles that we talk about, the price, my dear taxpayer, is going to be $1,147,170,000. If you guys want to vote them, yes, you vote yes. But in my estimate, this particular warrant articles, they should vote no for our own good and for the good of our families. Because $1,147,000, it's a lot of money. Now, it's up to you to really, when the election day comes, to just, do the right thing. Thank you.
John Goodrich, member of the Budget Committee. I'd like to, first of all, I appreciate Mr. Bowler's impassioned plea, and I understand his frustrations. And I think he's right to say that our fire department and EMT people deserve our support and respect, but it doesn't mean unbridled support. To clear up the notion, the Budget Committee actually meets with most all major departments as we go through our season. And so we don't leave it unturned, and we do meet with each one and have a chance to ask questions and give and take. I can tell you my personal reason for voting against this as a Budget Committee member. And I don't like voting against it because we have employees that work hard and depend on that employment. But we've come through a COVID period where there's been tough inflation. Inflation at one point hit 8% this year. And I think overall it's subsiding a little bit, and I'm no economist to predict what it will become. But comparatively speaking, the police department and the town employees with the highway and all that came in somewhere in the 5 to 7% range for increases in their collective bargaining agreements. When we did the math on the fire, I personally calculated somewhere around 14%. And I just thought, boy, this is just not in line and really way out of proportion to what the others did. We had the fire department come in and explain what this really was. And in fact, the explanation was very labyrinth-like, to be honest. They're trying to do quite a few things in this budget. They're trying to change their rate. They're trying to change their hours. And they're trying to, and I understand, they work 48-hour weeks. They're trying to reduce it. And then they want to reduce the amount of overtime. All those things combined make it very complicated. But it also obscures what's really happening with costs. And the fact is, by my estimation, those costs are up 14% or even a little bit more than that. To me, that's not fair to the taxpayer. And I think the Budget Committee has a job and a duty to respond to taxpayers. So therefore, in my opinion, again, I took my vote and made it, but I did it under that was my reasoning for it. So it was not a whimsical idea just to vote against it. And I just put that out there. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Dan, hold on. There was a gentleman behind you.
Tommy Hartwell, I'm the union chair. I just wanted to make mention that 12 people in the union is not a new number. It's been that number since 2020. Just recently, we've jumped back down to 11 with a promotion of a deputy chief. Our intention during negotiations with the town was that year one was going to be zero impact to the taxpayer. We were going to use those 12 positions to run this new schedule that was just mentioned. During negotiations, it's a give and a take, right? There's a benefit to us. We get a better schedule. There's a benefit to the town. It should have been 0% increase to the town year one. And yes, we did negotiate in a decrease in overtime with that in mind as well.
Deanne Stearns Littleton, and member of the Budget Committee. There's no question the fire and EMS is a valued service and a necessary service for the town. However, this was a difficult article for the Budget Committee, and as you can see, the majority did not support it. And just in general, there are some things that gave us, or me, some concern. And one of them was transparency. Another one was how this new position was presented in a negotiated contract, which is somewhat different than the way new positions were added in the past. They were either placed in the budget or as a warrant article. And also, I was underwhelmed by the amount of, I guess you'd say, planning or preparation that went into negotiating this contract, because when the Budget Committee met with the town manager, finance director, and the select board members, we had asked them, what was your plan going into this negotiation session? And their response was, well, there was none. And that was troubling for me, and I think for some of the others, because if you don't have a plan going into a negotiation, then you're pretty much setting yourself up for failure or not a success. So going back to the transparency issue, I think in this Article 10, the amount requested for year 2023 is listed as $72,875. But in talking with the finance director, $70,094 is for the new position. And that breaks down to $52,138 in wages, $17,200 for retirement, and $766 for Medicare. However, it gets a little bit more confusing because the cost for health insurance is not included in this article. It's included in the budget general fund expense, or budget line for health, fire health insurance. And she tells me that $40,000 was included in that line item to cover health costs for the new position, estimated to be a minimum of $10,000 if it were for a single plan, or as much as $27,000 depending on the plan. And the rest of the money is to cover changes during the fiscal year for other members for a single to family plan or two-person plan. So I think it would have been more clear for the voters to have that range, because ultimately that new position, given those figures, are going to cost $80,000 or as much as $97,000. So I think just want to be clear on that. And another thing, as far as the overtime is concerned, when we met as a budget committee with the chief and deputy chief, one of the things they shared with us was their call report for the month of November. And when we were looking at that, and again, what John said, it's a very complex process. There are a lot of moving parts, and we as a budget committee are trying to understand what's driving overtime, because when you look at it, in 2021, the budgeted amount was $40,000, a little over that. The actual cost came in at $56,799, which was a 40.5% increase over the budgeted amount, which was actually 16,000 over. And then for 2022, the overtime budget amount was $60,494, and the actual cost came in at $97,233, which that was an increase of $36,729 over the budget, or 60.7%. And in 2023, the budgeted amount is now what we had spent actually last year, which will be for $96,000. But what do we know about that? Because it's a moving target. We haven't been accurate by huge amounts over the past 2 years. And with these changes in the contract and the hours, all these moving parts, who knows what this overtime budget amount is going to be. It can be much more than what we're predicting because we haven't had much success. It's gone from 40% over, 60% over. So can we expect the overtime cost for 2023 to be 80% over for a possible $172,000 actual? I mean, no one knows that, but this is the concern that I had looking at these numbers, and I'm sure some of the other members did too. And again, it goes back to the complexity of the things going on and the changes in the hours, and also going back to that call report. Some of us had discussed it, and we thought perhaps there should be a little bit more detail into what the calls are and how many folks or how many vehicles are responding, et cetera, so we all can get a better understanding of what's going on with responses and to get a better handle on how this is impacting overtime over time. So that's another concern that we had. And so I can go on, but these were the main items that I had, and they're significant in terms of cost numbers and budgeting. And so that was, I think, a driving factor for a majority, or at least for me, for voting against this negotiated contract, because I think the fire department did a great job in getting their message out and getting their voice heard. But I think on the taxpayer side, that was not the case. And the taxpayers' voice was not heard as clearly as it should have been to get a deal that both is fair and balanced for both parties. And again, that was concerning for me. And I'd like to know if any of the select board members would like to comment, if they were involved, I mean, in a general way, their feelings on this negotiated agreement and how it played out. Thank you.
I just have a couple of comments. There's a lot of talk about overtime. I've been a city town manager for over 24 years, and not a single city or town that I've ever worked with has overtime in the fire department not been discussed. It is a department that runs 365 days a year, 7 days a week. There are no holidays, there are no closed days. Even at full staffing, if we had a fire department that had 4 people per shift, the only way you don't have overtime is then that somebody doesn't get a day off, somebody doesn't get sick, somebody doesn't take a vacation, or you don't have a workers' comp claim. So it's an impossible notion to believe that you can run public safety and fire in particular when you have a mandatory minimum staffing of having no overtime. I hear about the overtime every 2 weeks. My boss, Roger Emerson, chairman of the board, will come in and have that discussion with me, and we go through and we talk about, if you go back and look at the department, at the times they had openings this year in reference to vacant positions, in addition to vacant positions, you may also then have somebody out on workers' comp. So there's a combination of things that can factor that. Was overtime over budget? Absolute. But ladies and gentlemen, the fire department was under budget for 2022. That was one line item in the entire budget. It's an important line item. I'm not minimizing that. It is an important line item. It's a lot of money. But the department was under budget. And I will never stand here and tell you that we can budget and plan exactly for what overtime would be. And I do take a little bit of umbrage in the sense that we had no plan. When you go into negotiations, first of all, part of it is you wait and see what it is that's being asked and projected from the other side. The other part of negotiations is we all know that the citizens of any community are only going to allocate a certain amount of money, and I put it in simple terms. You're only giving us a certain size pie, and then we have to negotiate on how we divide that pie up and what slice goes to fire, what slice goes to police, and what slice goes to public works and transfer station in this category. So to say that we had no plan, the plan actually was to come out of there with agreements, with long-term agreements, with labor peace, costs that we knew and can plan for, and also to eliminate additional costs in labor negotiations.
Thank you, Jim. Tommy Hartwell again. In reference to the 12th position that was negotiated, it wasn't negotiated because we had 12 members at the time of the proposal. So that wasn't even mentioned during negotiations. I think that's fair for the taxpayers to know. The next thing is overtime. How much of that overtime was created by vacancies? We're going on 3 months right now of a vacancy that we're filling with overtime. We're in a man-for-man system, which means when somebody's out, somebody has to fill it, okay? One way to reduce overtime is keep those vacancies filled, right? How do we do that? We don't work a normal schedule, but 42-hour work weeks is a good step in the right direction to keep employees. The other thing that nobody seems to be talking about is the revenues generated by what we're doing. Does anybody want to talk about that? Can you guys mention what was generated by the fire department this year? Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Chad Miller. I'm the deputy chief. I did get to meet with the budget committee on at least one occasion, and you're right, our operations are extremely complex. And I think trying to understand how we could overexpend overtime so much but come in under budget is the overriding question. And that's because the overtime budget doesn't take into account when employees leave and we have a gap before we can bring in another employee. It really wouldn't make sense to put money towards that. We have money in the regular employee line, which is why in the fire department budget, if you look at the first line, permanent positions are underexpended by $65,000. That's money because we didn't have a regular employee on that day, the vacancies that the union chair mentioned. Our overtime is overexpended by $62,000, kind of comparable to the $65,000 that we saved in the permanent line. That's why we don't budget that amount actually, because it actually would be like a double taxation. On the revenue side of things, we really did have a stellar year. A lot of reasons why. We estimated we would bring in $280,000 worth of revenues, and the total amount that was deposited this year was $555,000. So that's basically off the work that the firefighters are doing out in the field, treating patients and transporting them to the hospital, and the costs that towns pay us to contract for their services. Thank you.
Sean Piet, Littleton. I know this discussion's going on, so I'll try to be quick. Also on the budget committee, I'm the one that's up there. And the reason I voted for was that the chief came in telling us that to be able to recruit people and keep them, we needed to go to a 42-hour work week. And in these inflationary times, it's difficult to ask someone to take an overall cut in pay when you're talking about a 5 or 6% inflationary time frame. And even though they're going to be going down in hours of 300 hours a week. So they're going to work 300 hours less a year because of the difference in the work week, but at the same time, so that's why I voted for it. Now, I think it would help from the union president if we could hear, my understanding was there's 3 major parts to this. One, the overtime amount, the work hours of the week, and the pay steps and whatnot. And when we go, I believe that the last year, the overtime kicked in at 48 hours, and the town conceded to bring that we'd pay overtime at 45 hours once the average over 28-day work period. Dan was right, it was very complicated. But when there were 3 points, the overtime, and the town conceded to going from 48 hours, paying overtime at 48 hours to 45 hours. That's our understanding. And they cut the overall hours. They gave the firefighters the the work schedule that they wanted to help for recruitment and the overtime and all that stuff. And then the pay, there was no decrease in pay. So, and the president came up here tonight and said that there was give and take. So, and from the budget committee standpoint, we only saw the town gave on the the 48 to 45, and gave in on the schedule and the other side. So, the question, it would be helpful to hear what the other side of it was. 0% the 0% increase on year one. Okay, so. Yeah.
Hey, can we use the microphones, please? It helps everybody hear.
I was going to summarize it for him at the end. No, yeah, we'll go back and forth, yeah. And this is not contentious at all.
No.
I think it would help you because.
So it's going to be subjective, obviously, and if you don't agree to agree, then it is what it is.
I was the one up there.
But
I supported you guys.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that in general, it's going to be subjective. But
All right.
year one, firefighters are taking no increase annually. Yes, there's an increase hourly. We wanted to make sure that we stayed, you know what I mean? So that there was going to be zero tax impact. We had 12 positions going into negotiations. We were planning on using those 12 positions, or we thought those 12 positions were going to be used in this new schedule. So year one, that shouldn't have been whatever, 10-cent increase. It should have been zero increase.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That does, I believe.
Okay. Sorry. It's hard to explain because.
It was with the drop in hours. The intention was with the drop in hours, a 0% increase. The somewhat perceived increase would have been on the hourly rate went up 15% or whatever, 10 to 14, somewhere in there. But your total for the year did not go up.
Correct.
So the intention was that there was no increase for the town first year one.
Yes.
But the end result was that there was an increase of 72,000.
Which is way out of my control. When we negotiated that contract, I don't have a say in that.
Gotcha.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. But from the budget committee standpoint, when we were seeing it, so to Ray Bowler's point of, do we think for our own or do we just take the lead from prominent people? No, we meet with all the department heads and put in many hours to figure this out. And given what we were being told and looking over the contract, it seemed like the town was giving up more than it was getting, especially with the $72,000 year one increase is what it turned out to be. Welcome to use the microphone.
I used to like math. I don't anymore.
Ron, can you state your name? Sorry.
Ron Bolt. I read the article in the paper trying to explain the 42 and the 48 and the 45, and I came away in the middle of a mire. Was not clear. But I want to address the phrase in this article that says, with an addition of one new position. I've heard twice now tonight that there is no new position. If that's the case, this article needs to be changed. If it is one new position, I'm afraid this article is doomed because of the way it was presented. Thank you.
This contract over a 4-year period averages 5.07% increase. The 3-year contract in the highway department averages a 5.08%. And the 3-year contract in the police department averages just a little over 7%. So those are your averages over the 3-year period and the 4-year period. So the average of 5.7% is actually below the average of the police department, and it's incomparable to the average with the Department of Highway and the transfer station.
Bill LaTulip, 3 years ago when we were contracting our ambulance business, there were 2 firemen on and 2 EMS people on every day. So that's 4. These firefighters, they said, we're going to make it work. So they said, we can do it with 3. And back then, we had probably 700 calls a year. I think we're at 1,600 now. And these guys are working their butt off, I'm telling you. You know, I think the budget committee should take a look at, they made money. How many departments made that kind of money, right? So that gives us money in our rainy day fund. We're not saying we want that money. Hell no. Let's take a look at this stuff. We're not looking at the whole picture here. And I watched you guys on TV on the budget committee. I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe you guys pounded on everybody. Never mentioned, nice job, guys. You made some money, right? And you're doing a great job. You had a great service. Nope. Just put the thumb on them. Say, we had one gentleman that said, I understand that. And you guys sat there and go, no. So I agree with Mr. Bola. We should do away with the budget committee because they're non-binding and go to 5 selectmen and let them do it. But that's here or there, but just hope you listen to that. And then the overtime thing, Roger, the way you were on them all the time about they were over budget, didn't you take a look at what we spent with full-time people? That hadn't spent it all yet, but yet the overtime budget was, what, $2,000, a little less, I think it was. So, well, I'd like to see us try to do away with that vote no from you guys. And if you want to talk about it, I know you can change it. So, because I like the taxpayer to know what's going on, that, you know, they're working as a great team. And you guys, I've been there since 1965. Yeah, I've seen a lot.
Steve Kelly, Budget Committee. Obviously, a lot of good discussion tonight, but truthfully, I have a hard time accepting the criticisms of the Budget Committee as obviously having a predetermined outcome, which was kind of mentioned. I think we went into it open-minded. I don't think there's ever been any, certainly I know that I haven't had anybody in the town of Littleton giving me direction on what should or shouldn't be happening with the fire, police, or highway. I mean, we go there as an independent body, we analyze, we listen, and we give our best recommendation. And I don't know the exact years that the Budget Committee's been around, but I believe it started during the Great Depression, and it's been functioning very well ever since. I think doing away with the Budget Committee would be a bad mistake, and I think that both on the school side and on the town side, our elected officials appreciate our input, because once they get to making their decision, at least hopefully they've been informed and all the hard questions have been asked, and obviously you know, they'll make the final decision. They're the people we vote for. It's one of the issues, truthfully, was, at least my personal opinion, was that this contract was not well explained. We had to do a lot of digging, reading into it ourselves. It wasn't, truthfully, the changes were not laid out in the presentation. We had to read into it ourselves to find out what was actually happening. But probably the main thing, obviously, and there again, obviously a bit of a unusual structure in terms of what most of us are used to in society about work schedules, but there are 13 4-week periods in the year, and each of our firefighters now works 8 of those 8 days in those 28-day periods. The change is that they're going to be going from working 8 days in a 28-day period to 7, and that's how John came up with his math of 14%, because when you end up working 7 days for the same pay that you worked 8 days for previously, that's the 14% increase. I asked the chief at one point in time, you know, what the big driver was to go to the 7-day a 7-day work schedule in a 28-day period. And basically he said, you know, that in his efforts to recruit firemen from other larger cities or larger towns in southern New Hampshire who were already working the 7-day schedule, that he can't get them to come to Littleton to work 8 days when they can work 7 days in Manchester. I asked the question, I says, well, are you telling me that a firefighter would rather work 8 days, would rather work 7 days in Manchester and 8 days as opposed to 8 days in Littleton, and that's the deciding factor on them taking a job with us? And his answer was yes. Yeah, my thought is, okay, so what happens when Manchester goes to 6 days in a 28-day schedule? Are we going to chase that number? You know, we're trying to be fair, and we're obviously trying to be sure that the plan they have set is actually going to work. I mean, obviously, if you figure it, if you have your same group of people that are now working the 7 days, there's going to be all those additional days that your existing crew, they're still going to end up working the 8 days, except they're going to work the 8th day at time and a half. So, you know, we just didn't, my sense is that we didn't have a comfort level with it. It wasn't well enough explained. Truthfully, when Chad came at the second meeting to explain it, he couldn't even tell us for sure which schedule they were going to actually be working. I think he said there's 3 or 4 different schedules that exist that would meet that 42-hour or 45-hour criteria, but never really got into explaining how those would work. So I think the Budget Committee worked very hard on this. It wasn't a lightly made decision, but I think at the end of the day, I certainly felt that more discussion needed to be had and a more comprehensive decision needed to be made. I don't think anybody's questioning the quality of the fire department or the EMS, how hard they're working, that they're getting the job done. But you know, then there's one other looming issue is that all of our area towns are being equally challenged in this respect and are having very, very difficult time supporting their volunteer services. So what was initially mutual aid, I think is not as mutual as it used to be. Not that the towns wouldn't come and help us if we had a problem, but their ability to come and help us, I think, has been diminished. And I've been asking for a long time that, you know, basically saying that we needed some leadership from somebody within the fire community that could reach out to these other towns and truthfully come up with a comprehensive plan, not just for Littleton, but Sugar Hill, Lisbon possibly, Franconia, you know, Bethlehem. It's a bigger issue than just what we're discussing here tonight. And unless we get our arms around it and really understand where we're moving, it's very difficult to authorize or support this change. Thank you.
I'm bold again. You can see I got my coat on, so I'm leaving. But I never get an answer to, is this a new position or not? And if it's not, that language needs to be changed.
Mr. Bold, I can answer that for you. The reason the verbiage is put in here is because we wanted to be transparent. In order to do a 42-hour work week, they need 12. They had 12 until we made the promotion from Captain Miller to Deputy Chief Miller. That was done after, or excuse me, before this process negotiation was started. This warrant article could have been written just directly as is, taking that person out, but we wanted to err on transparency and letting the citizens know that in voting that it did require a 12th person, which traditionally is what they had in order to work the 42-hour week. That's why we had it in there.
Good evening, Mike McQuillan, Fire Chief. I just wanted to comment on the discussions and stuff. We did have discussions with the Budget Committee a lot on the overtime, and the explanation was given as to why with the vacancies. The discussion for Manchester was never had. We never discussed Manchester. We're not going to compete with Manchester because they pay so much more money. Nobody would leave Manchester to come up here, so I want to put that out there. What we did talk about was the departments that we're losing our employees to are in the Lakes region, just south of the Notch. We're one of the only departments that work a 48-hour work week. They work a 42. My last 3 vacancies that I've tried to fill that has caused our overtime has been employees leaving to work for less hours a week for more money at departments they can commute to. That's who we're trying to compete with, and that's where this schedule came from. So you can watch the tapes, you can see that online, you can see the discussions we had. A lot of that information was given, and I will give the same information to any of the taxpayers as I did to the selectmen and the budget committee. Please come down to the firehouse and meet with us. I'm happy to go over numbers with you and show you everything, answer any questions you have. We're open. We're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Please come in and see us if you have questions.
All right, is there any other discussion? Oh, one more.
Yeah, I'll end this. It's been thrashed pretty good. It reminds me of...
Tom, can you state your name?
Tom Alt.
Thank you.
Reminds me of the old movie Cool Hand Luke. Anybody ever see Cool Hand Luke? When the bad guy sheriff said, what we have here is a failure to communicate. And it sure sounds like that. Whatever confusion is going on, not just in this room tonight, but on Main Street, throughout the year, you know, they see a fire truck race down the street and an ambulance behind it and all these things, and of course, it's news, turns into gossip. But there really does sound to be a failure to communicate here that certainly could be improved on greatly, that might clear up a lot of this, what some people think is not a very transparent situation. So if, you know, the thing can get voted on, people can vote it down come town meeting. That's an option for the town. But in the meantime, maybe a lesson that can be learned tonight with this situation is better communications, clearer communications, making things clear to the taxpayer who is the source of all this money. Thanks.
All right, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of putting the article on the warrant as presented, please hold your cards up and say aye. Aye. All right, opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Article 11, shall the town, if warrant article number 10 is defeated, authorize the governing body to call one special meeting at its option to address warrant article number 10, cost items only. Estimated tax impact is none. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3 to 0 to 0. Recommended by Budget Committee 2 to 5 to 0, which I guess is a not recommended. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none. All those in favor of placing Article 11 on the warrant as presented, please hold your cards up and say aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Article 12. Shall the town raise and appropriate as an operating budget for the sewer department the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein totaling $1,286,486, said sum to come from the sewer fund and offset by user fees. Of this amount, $857,746 will be used for direct expenses associated with running the sewer system, and $428,740 will be used to reimburse the general fund for indirect expenses included in the Article 5 operating budget, such as salaries. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $1,294,972, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, 10, and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Estimated tax impact none. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3 to 0 to 0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 5 to 0 to 0. And we'll have Doug Damco come up and speak on this.
This year's been a challenging year, and if you paid attention to the articles in the paper over this year, we've been doing a lot of work at the treatment plant to get different items that have fallen apart. The plant's about 30 years old in terms of the last time it went through substantial upgrades, so This budget is the operating side of it. We've had separate approvals on warrant articles for improvements at the plant, but this is the operating budget. We've renegotiated a new 5-year contract with our operator, which is H2O Innovation. So that's included in this budget. I'm here for any questions you may have. Thank you.
All right, is there any discussion? All those in favor of putting Article 12 as presented on the warrant, please hold up your cards and say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Speeding right along to Article 13. Shall the town raise and appropriate as an operating budget for the Water and Light Department, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with a warrant or is amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $14,852,246. Said sum to be offset by user fees. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $14,765,463, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town or by law or by the governing body, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, 10, and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Estimated tax impact is none. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 2 to 0 to 1. Recommended by the Budget Committee 5 to 0 to 0. All right. Would anybody like to speak on this or have discussion on this? Seeing none. All those in favor of putting the article on the warrant as presented, please hold your card up and say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Article 14, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into a 3-year lease with the Mount Eustis Ski Hill Group for up to 33 acres of town-owned property known as the Mount Eustis property as shown on tax map 92330 under the terms negotiated and agreed upon by the Mount Eustis Ski Hill Group and the town of Littleton in consultation with the Parks and Recreation Commissioners and in accordance with town and zoning planning regulations and after at least 2 public hearings. Estimated tax impact is none. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3 to 0 to 0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 6 to 0 to 0. Anybody like to speak on this? All right. All those in favor of putting the article on the warrant as presented, please hold your cards up and say aye. Aye. All right, opposed? The ayes have it. Article 15, convey property to State Route 18, St. Johnsbury Road, map 55, lot 8. To see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to convey property located on Route 18, St. Johnsbury Road, tax map 55 and lot 8, which property was acquired by tax deed in 2017 to the state of New Hampshire in exchange for property located at Riverside Drive, tax map 84 and lot 7. Estimated tax impact is none. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3 to 0 to 0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 6 to 0 to 0.
Just one comment.
Yeah, Jim?
The town did its due diligence, and we performed a environmental assessment on the lot on Riverside, and there are no environmental issues. It was used by DOT in the past, but there are no environmental concerns. And this lot could add benefit to the community in terms of as a tie-in to the trail system that's going through there, and also an enhancement of the River District Riverfront Commons project, whether it be additional parking or what have you, that could be utilized in terms of the trail system. So, and the state is interested in the lot that we had on St. Johnsbury Road, so it would be like an even swap.
All right. Is there any discussion? Oh, okay.
Steve Kelly, do we have any maps or anything just so people can conceptualize what the property is we're actually talking about in both places?
We didn't put any in there, and we can provide them. This is the lot that is on South Side and Riverside, the traditional, what was the DOT?
At the intersection of what used to be South Street Extension and?
Yes.
Okay, and which land are we giving up on St. Johnsbury Road relative to Kilburn Craigs?
Shop, a section that goes down to the interstate,
Across from
the Honda shop.
the Honda shop, okay.
Just a small
And it's something that the state would actually want and do something with? Yeah.
The state approached us with the land swap. This piece was put out originally for surplus sale, and the Board of Selectmen pulled it back to allow for negotiations with the state.
Yeah. Because I believe a few years ago, we were trying to get that property on South Street unsuccessfully at the time from the state, so something broke eventually, and there was interest. Okay, thank you.
Is there any other discussion? All right. All those in favor of placing Article 15 as presented on the warrant, please hold your cards and say aye. Aye. All right, opposed? The ayes have it. Article 16, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,371 to be placed in the Leave Time Liability Expendable Trust Fund previously established in 2003 under Article 15. This sum is equivalent to the unexpected balance of the 2022 appropriation for the Leave Time Liability Reduction Benefit and is to come from unassigned fund balance with no amount to be raised by taxation. Estimated tax impact is none. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0 to 0. Recommended by Budget Committee 6-0 to 0. All right, is there any questions or discussion? All those in favor of placing Article 16 on the ballot as presented, please hold your cards up and say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Article 17, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate from taxation the sum of $50,000 to be added to the police vehicles and equipment capital reserve fund previously established in 2020 under Article 33 under the provisions of RSA 35:1. Estimated tax impact is 6.9 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0 to 0, recommended by Budget Committee 6-0 to 0. Is there any discussion? Oh, Rudy? Okay. We've got one coming.
Rudy, if you came across the front, it would be quicker.
Rudy Gels, Littleton, New Hampshire. This one article, 17, in my opinion, it's a farce. I hope you guys don't know what farces mean. Because, first of all, the police department, the fire department, they get that $50,000 on a budget, on a town budget. That doesn't mean this over here doesn't have to be voted by nobody. That $50,000 for the SUV, it goes automatic from the town budget. I don't know why you guys put this one articles over here. That is a joke, if you ask me. Thank you.
Paul Smith, Police Chief. It's not a joke. We do not have $50,000 in the police budget, the operating budget for this particular item. I don't know where you got that information, but it is incorrect. This is a capital reserve fund. We set aside approximately $50,000 every year. On the fourth year, we'll purchase 4 vehicles. And so we won't see a bump in the tax rate with the purchase of these vehicles. There is a cost savings in both time and equipment by doing all 4 of them at once. Do you have any other questions? But we do not have $50,000 in our operating budget for police vehicles.
If I remember correctly, when Mr. Schuyler was a selectman, this particular one articles usually went on for a couple of years. Then, for whatever reason, Schuyler, he put that $50,000 on a town budgeting for the chief, for the police department, and for the town, and for the fire department, to use that $50,000 to buy the SUV. Mr. Schuyler, look through your paperwork.
Again, there's no $50,000 in the budget. Not to confuse you or anybody else here, we did purchase a vehicle once a year. It was not cost effective. It didn't help our fleet. It didn't reduce our maintenance costs. So we went to this 4-year program, and we removed the $50,000 from the budget, and now we ask you for $50,000 for a capital reserve fund so we can purchase them all at once, which again is cheaper in cost as far as time and parts. Thank you.
All right, is there any other discussion on the article? Hearing none. All those in favor of putting Article 17 on the ballot as presented, please hold your cards up and say aye. All right, opposed? All right, the ayes have it.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Moderator, I would like to make a motion to not reconsider prior articles that have been voted on thus far.
All right, so you're motioning to restrict reconsideration of all the articles so far
Correct.
presented tonight?
That is correct.
All right, we have a second from Linda McNeil. Is there any discussion on this? All right, I'll put it up to a vote. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration on all the articles we've gone over so far, please hold up your cards and say aye. All right, opposed? All right, the ayes have it. All of those have been restricted from reconsideration. Article 18, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate from taxation the sum of $50,000 to be added to the Fire Department Vehicles and Equipment Capital Reserve Fund previously established in 2020 under Article 32 under the provisions of RSA 35:1, estimated tax impact of 6.9 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0, recommended by Budget Committee 6-0.
The comment for Article 18 is, in the past, this had been budgeted at $1,000. I don't know what you can buy capital-wise. That's $1,000. So we made the recommendation to establish a capital reserve fund, very similar to what you did with the police department back in 2020, and that was start to appropriate $50,000 a year if approved. So again, it evens out that spikes and drops in tax rate when this money can be cumulative together and then made for purchase on capital equipment. In this case, would be towards vehicles. So it's a similar process that you approved in 2020 for the police department.
Are there any questions or discussion? All those in favor of placing Article 18 on the warrant as presented, please hold your cards up and say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. On to Article 19. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate from taxation the sum of $50,000 to be added to the Public Works Vehicle and Equipment Capital Reserve Fund previously established in 2020 under Article 31 under the provisions of RSA 35:1, estimated tax impact of 6.9 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0, recommended by Budget Committee 6-0.
There used to be a radio host who used to say ditto. So there's a little bit the same comment in reference to this. Again, Public Works had a $1,000 line item, and being that your three departments that are heavy on capital equipment, police, fire, and highway, we're recommending a similar program at $50,000 that can be accumulated over a period of time to for capital purchases, once again, to smooth out the spikes in the potential tax rate.
Are there any questions or discussion? All those in favor of placing Article 19 as presented on the warrant, please raise your cards and say aye. Opposed? All right.
Mr. Moderator?
Article passes.
Yeah, just one comment. What you don't see in the warrant articles, and we just talked about the capital equipment, is that the town was able to use in ARPA funds. These were federal funds that we received during COVID. We got $307,000 in 2001 and $307,000 in 2002. And so Using those funds this year eliminated over $220,000 of items that would have been warrant articles. So we did get some benefit, and we used those ARPA funds to items that would benefit the community long-term and alleviate the taxpayers from having to do double taxation for purchasing equipment that we were able to get with federal funds.
Thank you. All right, Article 20, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate from taxation the sum of $80,000 to cover costs associated with parking improvements and expansion of public parking lots, including design, construction, and acquisition of land and/or rights-of-way, easements, and buildings. This special warrant article will be a non-lapsing appropriation per RSA 32:76 and will not lapse until the purpose is completed or by December 31st, 2025, whichever is sooner. Estimated tax impact of 11.1 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0 to 0, recommended by Budget Committee 6-0 to 0.
This money is used to improve and repair existing parking lots that are either owned by the town or under lease by the town. You saw the completion of the lot behind the old Jack's movie theater in terms of last year, and so this is where that money goes. Highway Department will determine the next parking lots that need either be resurfaced or paved, and so that's where that $80,000 goes.
Sorry, John Piet from Littleton. Does the Remick Park parking lot by the skating rink qualify under this, or is that part of the Parks and Rec? Because that one is in rough shape. Okay. So it could be the one that gets paved. I'm not saying it is, but it's on the list. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or discussion? All those in favor of placing Article 20 on the warrant as presented, please hold your cards up and say aye. All right, opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Article 21, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate from taxation the sum of $500,000 for the purpose of improvements, replacement, or repair of roads and sidewalks. The special warrant article will be a non-lapsing appropriation per RSA 32:76 and will not lapse until the purpose is completed or by December 31st, 2028, whichever is sooner. Estimated tax impact of 69.4 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0 to 0, recommended by Budget Committee 6-0 to 0.
Similar to the parking improvement fund, this is money that's allocated for townwide roads and sidewalks. Last year, under contract, it was almost $700,000 was spent in repaving, and the Highway Department has put together a capital improvement list on roads and sidewalks in a priority order, which can always be subject to change, due to emergency or conditions. But again, that money is never enough to cover the roads and sidewalks that you've got in any community. Those of you who drive on some of the roads and walk on the sidewalks know the areas that still need continued improvement and replacement.
Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of placing Article 21 on the warrant as presented, please hold your cards up and say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Article 22, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate from taxation the sum of $20,000 to be added to the Library Building Improvement Capital Reserve Fund previously established in 2014 under Article 27 under the provisions of RSA 35:1, estimated tax impact of 2.8 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0 to 0, recommended by the Budget Committee 6-0 to 0. Any discussion? Anything? All right, all those in favor of placing the article on the warrant as presented, please hold your cards up and say aye. Aye. All right, opposed? All right, we're getting there. Article 23, Transfer Station Revolving Fund Tax Appropriation. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate from taxation $159,028 to be placed in the Transfer Station Revolving Fund. This amount is in addition to 2023 user fees, which will automatically be placed in the fund. Estimated tax impact of 22.1 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0 to 0, recommended by the Budget Committee 5-0 to 0. Anybody, any questions or discussion? All right. All those in favor of placing Article 23 on the warrant as presented, please hold your cards up and say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Article 24, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate from taxation the sum of $85,000 to cover estimated costs for 5 years to be added to the landfill closure capital reserve fund previously established in 1986 under Article 18 under the provisions of RSA 35:1. If Article 5 operating budget passes, this warrant Article 24 will be void. Estimated tax impact of 11.8 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0 to 0, recommended by the Budget Committee 6-0 to 0. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor of placing Article 4 on the warrant as presented, please hold your cards up and say aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Article 25, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate from taxation the sum of $40,000 for drainage and paving work to be completed at the town's transfer station. Estimated tax impact is 5.5 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0 to 0, recommended by the Budget Committee 6-0 to 0. Any discussion, any questions? All those in favor of placing Article 5 on the warrant as presented, please hold your cards up and say aye. All right, opposed? None. Article 26, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,065 to be placed in the Conservation Care Expendable Trust Fund previously established in 1994 under Article 10. This sum is equivalent to the unexpended balance of the 2022 appropriation for conservation expense and is to come from unassigned fund balance with no amount to be raised by taxation. Estimated tax impact is none. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0 to 0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 6-0 to 0. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of placing the article on the warrant as presented, hold your card up and say aye. Right, opposed? Ayes have it. Article 27, to see if the town will vote to rescind the provisions of RSA 31:95C and discontinue the Opera House Special Revenue Fund previously established in 1995 under Article 9 and to transfer the remaining balance to the unassigned fund balance. If Article 5 operating budget is defeated and the default budget is passed, this warrant Article 27 will be void. Estimated tax impact none. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0 to 0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 5-1 to 0.
Yeah, the recommendation for this is last year, the funding for the Opera House, I think, passed by 6 votes. If that vote had been 6 votes difference in the failing, there would have been no money budgeted for maintaining the Opera House, keeping the lights on, keeping the heat on, to operate the building as is. It's a town asset, and the recommendation is that it be brought into the general fund and therefore treated as an asset so that we budget annually to maintain that building, and we'll offset what costs we can through revenue.
Are there any questions or discussion? All right. All those in favor of placing Article 27 on the warrant as presented, please hold your cards up and say aye. Opposed? Right, the ayes have it. Article 28, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $122,950 for Opera House operations. Of this amount, $82,950 is to be raised by taxation and $40,000 will be withdrawn from the Opera House Special Revenue Fund. If Article 27 passes, this warrant Article 28 will be void. Estimated tax impact of 11.5 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0 to 0, recommended by Budget Committee 4-0 to 1.
This would only be in effect if Article 27 failed. And again, then the town would be dependent upon this article passing, since there's no funds in the general fund for maintaining the Opera House building. So it hopefully 27 passes and 28 then won't be needed.
Are there any questions or discussion? All those in favor of placing Article 28 on the warrant as presented, please hold your cards up and say aye. As opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Article 29, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate from taxation $465,037 to be placed in the Park and Recreation Revolving Fund. This amount is in addition to 2023 user fees, which will automatically be placed in the fund. Estimated tax impact of 64.5 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3 to 0 to 0, recommended by the Budget Committee 5 to 0 to 0.
The only comment I've got there is Parks and Recreation. If you charge the user fees, the cost of it, what the programs would be, the people you're serving wouldn't be able to afford to use the services. So this is one of those items in communities where it does require some funding support from the taxpayers in order to keep programs viable and affordable to the people that you're trying to serve.
Any discussion or further questions? All right. All those in favor of placing Article 29 on the warrant as presented, please hold your cards up and say aye. All right. Opposed? All right. The ayes have it. Article 30, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate from taxation the sum of $50,000 for renovations to the Apthorpe dugouts, not to exceed $50,000 for the Park and Recreation Department. Estimated tax impact is 6.9 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3 to 0 to 0, recommended by Budget Committee 0 to 7 to 0, which I assume is a not recommended. Are there any questions or discussion?
Dan Stearns, Littleton, and a member of the Budget Committee. Just to point out that the vote by the Budget Committee in not supporting this, I think stemmed from the fact that the amount requested, one we thought was rather high, and it wasn't supported by a qualified contractor's estimate. And so for that reason, we didn't support that. And if you remember last year, we've had similar issues with Parks and Rec coming in and requesting purchases, capital reserve, or constructions items without any estimate by a qualified contractor. And at that time, we requested that in the future that they substantiate those requests with a qualified estimate. And so, again, this year they made a request, and for that reason, it was not supported.
Caitlin Leveroni, Parks and Rec Director. I do want to speak to that. So last spring, summer, when I had a big plan to go over maintenance in buildings that need to be fixed, the Apthorpe dugouts were found to be unsafe. If you guys had driven by the fields, you'll see that they were braced all last spring and summer. I put out an RFP, I set up a site visit, and I got no contractors to come out and even bid on this project. Knowing that it is still a safety issue, I felt like I still needed to put it as a warrant article, and I'm hoping that it doesn't cost $50,000. I would love to be under budget or find someone to donate some materials, but yeah, so I still know it's a safety issue. I'm hoping with this I can then find a contractor to come out and actually do the project.
John Goodrich, Budget Committee. In addition to the comments Dan made, and I voted against it also for a different reason, but I'd also, at the same time, compliment Caitlin for the great job she does and good presentation and caring about the kids of the town. I think this is the kind of project that it would be really nice to see volunteerism and good Yankee ingenuity to dive into this one with the dugouts. I'm not sure we should burden the taxpayers with that kind of thing, and I think it would be a great example of what we can do in Littleton if we pull together and work on it. I'd be glad to work on it myself, just to put it out there. So, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor of placing Article 30 on the warrant as presented, please hold up your cards and say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Article 31, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate from taxation the sum of $13,895 for security cameras for park buildings for the Park and Recreation Department. Estimated tax impact of 1.9 cents per thousand, recommended by the board 3 to 0 to 0, recommended by the Budget Committee 7 to 0 to 0.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to say, especially this last year, we experienced quite a bit of vandalism involving the parks facilities. And while cameras don't necessarily guarantee somebody not doing something, at least there may be a record of who it is, or enough of a record that maybe helps with our police department be able to identify who the culprits or those are. So this is almost an investment in protecting your parks and rec facilities.
Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor of placing Article 31 on the warrant as presented, please hold your cards up and say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Article 32, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate from taxation the sum of $35,000 to replace lights at the Apthorpe Soccer softball field for their Park and Recreation Department. Estimated tax impact is 4.9 cents per thousand, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0 to 0, recommended by the Budget Committee 7-0 to 0.
John Piet, Budget Committee. When this was pitched to the Budget Committee, I'm saying this for the record for anyone that's watching, that if I saw when I saw $35,000 for lights, I thought that's crazy expensive, but it's to replace all the lights, because the answer is to put LEDs in, which will consume less energy when they're running and give a brighter light. And if we replace only one, then you have one white one and some yellow, and it's going to look much better to just sink in the money and get it switched out all at once. So that's why that amount is what it is.
Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor of placing Article 32 on the warrant as presented, please hold up your cards and say aye. Aye. All right, opposed?
Mr. Moderator, can I just make a comment?
Sure.
This is in reference to some of the concerns that came from the Budget Committee involving some of the items that are requested from Parks and Rec. You have the state's only elected Parks and Rec commissioners that are a completely separate entity. And I'm going to be working with Caitlin this year to engage them so that the items that are coming from Parks and Rec are actually coming from the Parks and Rec commissioners, those who are elected here in town to oversee the Parks and Rec facilities, so that they're involved, they're backing up what it is they're being requested, and they're the ones making the request through Caitlin and I. So I'll be working with them, and hopefully you'll see a little bit more transparency in the budget process this next year.
Article 33, to see if the town will vote to appropriate $3,559 for dog park expenses, with said funds to come from the Dog Park Special Revenue Fund previously established in 2019 under Article 9 per RSA 31:95C. Estimated tax impact is none, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0 to 0, recommended by the Budget Committee 6-0 to 0. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor of placing Article 33 on the warrant as presented, please hold your cards up and say aye. Aye. Right. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Article 34, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be placed in the Local Assistance Expendable Trust Fund previously established in 2012 under Article 14. These funds are a portion of the unexpended balance of the 2022 appropriation for welfare expense and will come from unassigned fund balance with no amount to be raised by taxation. Estimated tax impact is none, recommended by Board of Selectmen 3-0 to 0, recommended by Budget Committee 5-0 to 0.
Yeah, in the welfare budget, the previous years, that budget had been greatly expended beyond what was budgeted. Under state statute, apparently you have to spend what is required to provide services to those in need. And I think that COVID exacerbated that. So the last 2 years, we budgeted more accurately based on the last previous years, and we're seeing that trend coming back down in reference to what are the daily demands. So this is an opportunity at a time to take an amount of what was budgeted last year and not spent and move over to the trust fund.
Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor of placing Article 34 as presented on the warrant, please hold up your cards and say aye. Aye. Right, opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Article 35, to see if the town will vote to readopt the optional veterans tax credit in accordance with RSA 72:28(2) for an annual tax credit on residential property of $500. This article is a result of passage of HB 1667, which clarifies that veterans of the United States Armed Forces who served in any active duty status and who continue to serve qualify for the veterans property tax credits. The town originally adopted this $500 credit in 2006 under Article 17. Estimated tax impact is none. Recommended by Selectmen 3-0 to 0. Recommended by Budget Committee 5-0 to 0.
Article 35 is an update in language that comes out of the House bill. So it's a tax credit that you already had on the books, but we're just making sure the language in that tax credit mirrors the state statute.
Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor of placing Article 35 as presented on the warrant, please hold up your card and say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Article 36, to see if the town will vote to readopt the all veterans tax credit in accordance with RSA 72:28(b) for an annual tax credit on residential property which shall be equal to the same amount as the standard for or optional veterans tax credit voted for the town under RSA 72:28. This article is a result of the passage of HB 1667, which clarifies that veterans of the United States Armed Forces who served in any active duty status who continue to serve qualify for the veterans property tax credit. The town originally adopted this $500 credit in 2018 under Article 42. Estimated tax impact is none. Recommended by Selectmen 3-0 to 0. Recommended by Budget Committee 5-0 to 0.
Same comment as the previous. This is already on the books and available to veterans. This is just updating the town's language again with state statute and House Bill 1667.
How is this different, John Piet from Littleton, how is this different from Article 35? Because they look almost exactly the same.
The definition is in an optional veterans tax credit versus all veterans. So there's just a distinction that was made in the law that some veterans didn't qualify under one. And so I couldn't tell you, I mean, the exact state language, but it's almost to encompass veterans who weren't included in the previous language.
Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor of placing Article 36 on the warrant as presented, please hold your cards up and say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. All right, we skip ahead all the way to the last article, Article 47. Are you in favor of moving forward with the potential of building or purchasing a permanent town office? Estimated tax impact is none. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0 to 0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 0 to 5 to 0, which is, I guess, is not recommended.
As you all know, the town offices have been in the, currently the Bank of New Hampshire. It previously was other banks. Our current lease expires this June. I don't think so we'll have an impact on the lease because we're not going to go anywhere between March and July. But this is to test the temperature of the community. If they want to direct the town to explore either building or purchasing a permanent town office. When you rent forever, and that money just continues to go to a landlord. And when you purchase, just like purchasing your home, while there's always costs involved, at some point you own the home, and then you maintain from there. So this is just to gauge if the taxpayers would be in favor of exploring. If that were to pass, then we'd have to come back to the taxpayers with what potential costs would be to either build or buy a building that may be available. So that's the basis of this.
John Piet, Budget Committee, to explain why the Budget Committee voted against this, or at least why I did. Let's say that with some quick math, right now the rent costs about $45,000 a year. If the building in town building costs $1.5 million, which I think is probably a low estimate, at a 3% bond rate, then you're talking about $60,000 to $70,000 a year. So it would, just the interest would be 50% more than what we're paying in rent right now. So that's why we voted against it.
Rudy Joseph, Littleton, New Hampshire. Okay, Article 47, possibly should be amended because it's not written the way it should be written for the taxpayer. If you read the Article 47, it never mentions how much the town pays monthly or yearly. Just for somebody that doesn't know that. Monthly pay, it's $3,595 a month of our taxpayer go downstairs to the bank of New Hampshire. If we pay yearly, it's $43,140. Now, according to the gentleman over here, you know, that I worked for the budget committee, yeah, I think he's got something wrong. But I suggest that not just me, even the taxpayer, that it's $43,140 a year rent. It's money down the drain, man. We needed to have our own building, town hall building. We got the space. You got space behind the fire station. You got space behind the police department. You got a lot of space. Eventually, with the time, we're gonna recuperate all this money. Right now, what you're doing, actually, not you, what are they doing? Making the Bank of New Hampshire richer. Before it was $8,100 yearly. Right now, it's $43,140. Please, whatever you do, no give it the satisfaction that our money, our tax money, is going to go downstairs on the first floor to the Bank of New Hampshire. Please vote no. This is wrong. I think it is one article, it should be written because it's wrong. You know, you guys are not mentioning nothing about money over here. Nothing at all. Please, you know, see what you can do. Thank you very much.
Dan Stearns Littleton. I tend to agree with Rudy on one point here that I personally didn't support this because I didn't think it was written correctly in that it didn't include another option, and that is to explore renovating a town-owned facility that we currently own. So and that reason is why I voted against it.
And if we're going to go back to the term, I think, communication, the budget committee used, if there was a breakdown in communication or a miscommunication, I take full responsibility for that. That's my job, is to lead through that process. In this process of the Board of Selectmen asking for this warrant article, it was the distinct direction that I've been told is that the Opera House would be the first building that would be evaluated in terms of its cost and its feasibility for serving again as town hall. And I apologize if that wasn't clarified.
Okay, that's good to hear, but again, you don't get that from the way this is worded. So I think if it's possible to have it amended or revised to reflect that.
It's absolutely open for amendment. Someone needs to make a motion.
Dan Stearns, I'll make a motion that we amend Article 47 to include, are you in favor of moving forward with the potential of building, purchasing, or renovating an existing town building, parentheses, Opera House, town building, for a permanent town office?
All right, is there a second to that motion? All right, we have a second from Rudy. Dan, can you get that in writing, and we'll give it to both my, give it to me, please? Yeah, so that I can read it to the group.
Courtney Bowler, Littleton. I can agree with amendment, but I make a motion to strike the parentheses Opera House because there are multiple town buildings, and I don't want it to be locked into one option.
So we have a motion for an amendment to the amendment.
Sorry.
So point of order, isn't like we don't actually know the amendment until we get it in writing?
Right.
So there's no
So-
there's no amendment to amend until he hands you the written amendment.
Right, well.
Okay, I'll amend my initial amendment to just leave it as or existing town building, not specifying Opera House.
Okay, that is the person who seconded it, Rudy. Is that okay, so you're all right with that amendment so that we get down to one amendment? Awesome. All right. So the amendment that we're voting on is to reword Article 47 as the following. Are you in favor of moving forward? Are you in favor of moving forward with the potential of building, purchasing, or renovating an existing town building? Okay, I'm sorry. I think, Dan, you might want to come back up here. It's not flowing. I don't think it's flowing the way that you'd like it. So it says, are you in favor of moving forward with the potential of building, purchasing, or renovating an existing town building
for a permanent town office?
Okay. All right, I think we've got it. All right, so we are voting on amending Article 47 to read as follows. Are you in favor of moving forward with the potential of building, purchasing, or renovating an existing town building for a permanent town office? Angie, is that you good? All right. Is there any question or discussion regarding the amendment to the article? Oh, we've got one.
Mr. Chairman and town manager, on your amendment, I would like to see some money. You're not talking about no money. People don't know how much it will cost and stuff like that. I understand what your amendment to change Article 47. People want to see how much money it will cost. Yeah, sure.
Well, this amendment, Rudy, is just to give them, it's non-binding, it's just to give them direction. And then I think the next step would be to do some study and get some estimates, get some contractors together to come up with some kind of formal number.
Formal numbers and options.
That doesn't mean Article 47 doesn't going to go, on a book. Article 47, because if it's the way it is right now, people, when they go to vote, they can vote.
As Article 47
Yeah.
is titled, it is a non-binding question. That's what we're voting on, is a non-binding question.
I mean, I can't believe it. Article be no binding menu when you're talking about $43,000 that the taxpayer, they don't know about that because it's not written in the warrant article. It's not written in the warrant article. I know because I always go to the meetings. How many people over here they know that we pay $43,140 a year for leasing? How many people? But if it's written right on the warrant articles, they know because they read and eventually they're going to vote, no, we want to build our own tunnel hall. With the, you know, I mean, you know, it's, this, you know, this over here, I think Article 47, it's all, it's got to be abolished. It's got to be, you know, whatever you guys want to do. You cannot leave it like this. You cannot leave it like that. People there are not stupid over here.
Rudy?
Yes.
What this article will do, if the voters say, yes, we want you to move forward with either finding a potential building, staying where you're at, purchasing or renovating a current town building that we have. So what will happen is we'll have A, and it'll have 50,000 attached to it. Potential B will have whatever that number is to it. C will have that number to it. D will have that number to it. Then you, as the voters, will say, you know, thank you for doing your research. We would really like to go with D. But at that point, we may decide to stay at the bank. But what we're doing now is just finding out, is it better for A, B, C, or D for locations? But it's non-binding. There cannot be any dollar amount attached to it because it's just strictly doing research. And then
it's research by us, by the taxpayer?
As soon as the research is done, then we come back to the taxpayers and say, okay, this is what we found out. What is best for us as taxpayers for the town of Littleton?
That doesn't mean that you guys is going to take this one article out over the election, you know, over the, you know, the election booths and stuff like that people can vote on, right?
The only thing that us as taxpayers are going to be voting on is, do you want us to move forward in doing some research? That's it. Do you just want us to move forward in doing research? We couldn't tell you what it's going to cost for A, B, C, or D at this point, but do you want us to move forward on it? That's it. So if you asking your taxpayers to say no, then we're stuck. We won't move forward. We won't do any research. So all we want is permission to say, we're going to try to exhaust as many options as we can, and what is financially feasible or best for us here in Littleton. That's all we're doing. We're not. That's right. You get to vote on it next year.
Thank you.
Tom Clardy here in Littleton. I would ask, are you sure you want to ask that question as a taxpayer and a member of this town? Simply, you know, we don't know how to vote for that question. I look at all of the money that we're saying, yes, we're going to do this, 200,000, 200. By the time I get to 47 articles, I don't want to spend any more money. You know, really, so are you sure you want to ask the question? I would pose it to you that I would expect you as select people to develop the alternatives and then come to us. So if it's a business decision, is it more feasible for us as a town? Is it better long-term to build a building or to continue to rent? And just put the business case together and then present that case. Because if you get a no, the town doesn't want you to do it because we're exhausted voting 47 warrant articles, and if you get a no, then I don't know, that's not perhaps the best financial decision for the town. So I would suggest you drop it, make the best, put your plan together and present that as a warrant article for us to vote on with the cost, the benefit, and then the emotions of, do we have a town hall or don't we have a town hall? You know, I've got this great vision of, you know, like Back to the Future with our town hall in the you know, that would be nice. So it's an emotional decision as well. But I think we need to have the numbers, and you might get the wrong, answer emotionally that would lead us to the wrong long-term decision. So I would recommend you remove it and put a business case together.
Steve Kelly. For many years, we had a sweetheart deal with the bank, around $8,000 a year, and this has been discussed at the budget committee level every year, for as long as we've been there, and it was easy to run the math, but it was a no-brainer that the $8,000, we knew was a sweetheart deal. Some controversy about how long that sweetheart deal should have existed, and when it jumped up to $40-some thousand, there was a bit of sticker shock. If you run the simple math, I don't think we could build a town building for $1.5 million. It'd probably be more like $2 million, and at 3%, the interest alone would be $60,000 without any principal payments, which is more than $15,000 more than we're paying now. So if you look at it from a cash flow aspect, there's not much to be gained. But I don't think there's any harm in asking the question if to get some direction. If you get an abject no, that'll be your answer. If you get a yes, then there'll be more questions to be asked. But I wouldn't be afraid of asking the question.
Courtney Bowler, Littleton. So just refocusing on the purpose of this non-binding question, yes or no, with no tax impact, it's to give a direction and get a population poll on if the volunteer position of select board should spend energy looking for options if the voters agree with that question by voting yes. I think we just needed to refocus on that.
All right, is there any other discussion or questions regarding the amendment to the article? All those in favor of the amendment, please hold your card up and say aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Now, is there any more questions or discussion on the article itself? All those in favor of placing Article 47 as amended on the warrant, please hold up your cards and say yes, or say aye. Oh, there we go, we won. All right, opposed? All right, Article 47 is placed on the warrant. Are there any other motions to be made before we end the night? All right. Well, that concludes the first session of your 2023 town meeting. The second session is the second Tuesday in March, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the Littleton Highway Department. Thank you all for coming.